Jessica Frost-Ballas here with the next installment of Simon Says Stamp's Crafty Quintet. Each month I'll be sharing 5 of something crafty. Today I'm sharing 5 crafty ways to use stencils to create fun backgrounds for cards. I'm mainly focusing on how I've used my stencils to create different backgrounds rather than how to finish each individual card, but if you have any questions about the cards, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to answer. So let's get started. Whenever I get new stencils, I immediately spray them with repositionable adhesive. The spray is very fine, and once it's totally dry, you can easily reposition your stencils over and over. After using the stencil, you can even wash it with soap and water, and when it's dry, the tackiness from the repositionable adhesive comes back. I place my stencils in my overspray box outside, shake my spray thoroughly, and then apply a thin layer of spray to the back of my stencils. I let it dry for about 30 minutes, and then my stencils are ready for use. One quick safety note: I highly recommend using the spray outside or in an area with very good ventilation. If you have any respiratory issues, you might consider wearing a mask. My first background uses the most traditional technique with stencils, paste. I place the Simon Says Stamp Stained Glass 1 stencil over black cardstock, press down to stick the temporary adhesive, and then add post-it tape around the edges for extra security. Then I use a palette knife to spread a thin layer of Nuvo Glimmer paste in sapphire blue over the stencil. You want the paste to cover the whole stencil, but with as thin a layer as possible. I scrape the excess back into the container for future projects. While the paste is still wet, I peel off the tape and remove the stencil before allowing the panel to dry completely. My next background is a twist on traditional ink blending over a stencil. To start, again I tape the Simon Says Stamp Solar Burst stencil over a piece of white cardstock. First I blend Picked Raspberry Distress Oxide ink over the stencil. Then I lift the stencil, turn it slightly, and place it over the cardstock again. This time I blend Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide ink over the stencil. When I peel up the tape and stencil, it leaves behind an even more intricate design with hints of pink peeking through the coral. The next background results in a look similar to glimmer paste or embossing paste, but uses supplies easily found in your craft room. First, I prep a piece of black cardstock with my powder tool. Then I place the Simon Says Stamp squared end stencil over the cardstock panel and press clear embossing ink over the stencil thoroughly. You could also use Versamark, Distress Oxides, or pigment ink for this technique. Once the panel is completely covered with the embossing ink, peel off the stencil and cover the panel with embossing powder. I'm using WOW Clear Hologram Sparkle Embossing Powder for a super sparkly finish, but you could use any embossing powder or embossing glitter. My next background panel dry embosses a panel using only a stencil and a rubber mat with a die cutting machine. The die cutting sandwich will vary for each of the different machines, but the one requirement you'll need is a rubber mat. For the Gemini Junior, I place the cutting plate on the bottom and then the plastic plate. Next I place the Simon Says Stamp DEBRA stencil over a piece of navy blue cardstock and temporarily adhere it with a piece of washi tape. I place the panel, stencil side down, on my plastic plate. Then I cover it with my rubber mat and finally the second cutting plate before running it through my Gemini Junior. The stencil presses into the cardstock to create a dimensional dry embossed design that is the perfect subtle background for a busier card. My final card uses transfer gel to foil my stenciled image. I place the Simon Says Stamp Butterfly stencil over gray cardstock and tape it down with post-it tape. Then I spread a thin layer of foil transfer gel over the stencil, peel up the stencil and set the panel aside to dry. When the gel is totally clear, you know it's fully dry. It usually takes about an hour or two, depending on the humidity in your house. The dry gel works like a toner printed image when used with foil sheets and is the perfect way to get more use out of your stencils. To foil the butterflies, I fold a piece of computer paper in half to use as a carrier sheet. I place the gray cardstock panel inside and place the rainbow foil over the panel. Then I run the carrier paper through my hot laminator, crease side first. When it runs through the laminator, I carefully peel up the foil and I'm left with gorgeous rainbow butterflies. And since that foil sheet has a lot of foil left on it, I'll reserve it for a future alcohol ink or other crafting foil project. Finally, you can see how I finished each card using a variety of sentiments and word dyes from various companies. And that's it! I hope these cards inspire you to use your stencils in new ways. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to continue sharing a new Crafty Quintet with you next month. Have a fabulous day, and until next time, happy crafting!